to show me Moroccans becoming Christians.
Fair
That's
enough.
what I'm asking.
That is an absolutely fair question.
Thank you.
And the evidence that I would give to you is simply YouTube the testimonies of the Moroccan Christians. Oh, do you see? Do you see?
According to YouTube,
these three guys appealed to YouTube to show that Islam was growing in the park. But when I appeal to YouTube to show that Christianity is growing in Morocco, they say they don't want YouTube. If you look at America, and let's use America as an example, statistically, for every 24 people that convert to Islam, 24 people leave Islam. So the growth in America is not being caused by conversion. The growth in America is being caused by birth rate and immigration.
I just want to make a very simple point, yeah?
Yeah, go on.
He said that the law will be fulfilled, yeah? Once all the prophecies have come to pass, yeah? That's what you're saying, yeah? Let me just make a quick point, yeah? So what you're saying is, I asked you, have they all come to pass in the Old Testament? You said no, because the second coming doesn't come yet. This is still in the future. Therefore, that law cannot apply. That means he still hasn't come to abolish the law.
So, when Christ said, not a jot or tittle of the Mosaic law will be done away with until all is fulfilled, he is talking about the coming of the Messiah and everything that that means. He has come. Tell me, as a Muslim, let's just settle this argument right now. As a Muslim, do you believe Christ is the Messiah?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
I see you coming up to Muslims. Oh, let's debate about Tawheed. Let's debate about the Islam.
Yeah.
I never hear you going up to Christians. Let's debate about the what's it called? Other Christians. Like, for example, you have some of the Adventists who are different to you. I've never seen you debate them. I've never seen you debate Jews. I've never seen you debate atheists. Never in my life.
Okay, so well, shall I tell you? So allow me to respond. So allow me to respond. So allow me to respond. The problem is your filter. The problem is you only see what you want to see. Because if you objectively look through Soco films, rather than simply seeing what you want to see, you will see that I will debate atheists, I will debate agnostics, I will debate heretics, I will debate people who don't share the Christian faith.
It's 1 in a million.
Well, I'm sorry, but
because 99% of your videos are based on Islam and Muslims.
Well, I'm sorry, but when 99% of the people that I end up talking to are Muslims, well, I'm sorry, but if 99% of the time Muslims like you come up to me and make Islam the topic, then I am invited to talk about it.
I asked you a question. Why do you heavily focus on Islam?
So, but then you'll. But here's the thing. Next week you'll use this video as an argument, saying that I'm always talking about Islam.
No, I won't.
Of course you will.
I'm clarifying to you right now.
Of course you will. Of course you will. I
He wants to answer.
Plenty of people who are not Muslim.
But I'm saying 99% is based on Islam and Muslims. And the problem is, the question is, right, why does Islam threaten you so much?
Well, it doesn't threaten me.
He's coming closer to the truth.
It doesn't threaten me. It doesn't threaten me. Islam doesn't threaten me.
It does threaten you.
No. This is again your characterization.
It's not. It threatens
what
you
we should maybe talk about.
Growing, right? Every single week, people are becoming Muslims.
And every single week, Muslims are becoming Christians.
Every single week, people are becoming Muslims.
The fastest growing religion in Saudi Arabia is Christianity.
Hamza every week,
the
right?
fastest growing religion in Iran is Christianity.
Every single week, right? Hamza Mayat,
the fastest growing religion in the Islamic Republic of Sudan is Christianity.
And this threatens you.
The fastest growing religion in Morocco is Christianity.
Really?
The fastest growing religion in Indonesia is Christianity.
In the UK.
So,
in the UK. Hamza Mayat, right? In the past, every single week, right?
The fastest growing religion in Arabia is Zionism.
What's your point by this?
The point is, right, Islam threatens you clearly.
No. Your characterization does not define me. I find it funny. What I find funny.
The fastest growing religion in Morocco.
I'll give you an example.
Stats.
No stats.
No, we're not leaving. No, stats.
That's very far.
Stop.
So let's okay, so let's look at the stats. What's the majority religion?
Don't ask me questions. Stats, references.
Okay, so the majority religion in Morocco.
No, in Morocco.
Yeah. Let me address the point. Because it doesn't take a simple mind, even a simple mind, as demonstrated by the Islamic Dawah team, can grasp what I'm about to say. Yeah. If your religion is 100%, you cannot grow because you're already total.
Islam's growing, though. Clearly,
no,
Islam is growing.
I used examples of countries where the main religion is Islam and the second religion there too is Christianity. Right. Now, in those countries, it is growing. It is growing. The missionary organisations that work there.
Where are the stats?
The missionary organisations that work there.
Evidence.
I'll give you one evidence. I'll give you an evidence for Indonesia.
We have people.
Indonesia. Have you heard of the Save Mariam project? Have you heard of the Save Mariam project?
We want to see evidence.
No,
I'm going to give it to you.
You're not going to give me Indonesia.
I'm
We're
going
going to go back to Morocco. I want to go back to Morocco.
We'll come back to Morocco.
No, we're not going to go back to Morocco. We're already in Morocco. Where's the stats?
No, this is the UK, brother. Learn your geography. So, the point that I'm making to you, right? This brother. No, we're going to come to this. We're going to come to this, right? He wanted stats. He wanted sources. I'll give you a source for Indonesia. In Indonesia, the Mariam project, the Save Mariam project, is an Islamic project that is trying to address the fact that church growth in Indonesia is so fast that if it continues at its current rate, by 2060, Indonesia will be a majority Christian country. Okay. Indonesia, that's from an Islamic charity.
Okay, hold up.
Google it now. Google it now.
Listen.
Save Aisha Project Indonesia.
Hold up.
Morocco.
You're talking about ifs.
Morocco.
If you had wheels, you'd be a bicycle, but you don't have
Morocco.
You're making a claim. You're asking us to research with evidence.
Right.
You made a claim.
Morocco.
So give us the evidence.
Morocco.
Give me the source.
I'm giving you one source. I'm giving you one
You made a
source.
claim, though.
I am making a claim. I am making a claim.
What's the evidence?
I am making a claim.
Do you want us to email it to you?
No, give us, show it to me now.
we've got to give it to you.
I am making a
We can show you.
Listen, 25.
In this place,
Google.
a couple of weeks ago,
Yes, we know.
6 people became
We
Muslim.
know. We
Show us
know.
English.
Yeah.
We know.
Show us one, Bob.
I'm a Christian. It doesn't matter to me if English people got to
Show us
Islam.
one.
So,
Pull out your phone. Show us.
One Moroccan,
yeah.
one Indonesian that became
I've
Christian.
met Moroccans that have become Christians.
Give us the stats.
Personally.
Give us the stats.
Yeah, I have.
Because you
Give us
can't
the
I
find
have.
the evidence.
Now, I find it funny that the logic of the Islamic Dawah team is to characterize
There we go. Philosophy
everyone
and
who
logic.
opposes Islam
Philosophy and logic.
as being afraid of Islam. Why can't we oppose Islam just because it's a bad idea?
Listen. I don't want to
It's
hear.
a bad idea. That's why I oppose it.
Now listen.
But I also oppose Mormonism. And I also oppose Buddhism.
I don't want to hear
And I
philosophy.
also oppose atheism.
I don't want to hear philosophy. I don't want to hear philosophy. Where's your facts?
You want to believe that.
Listen, where's your facts? I don't want to hear philosophy. I don't want to hear philosophy. There you go.
I'm going to come to Morocco.
No.
What this
When are you going to go back to
demonstrates
Morocco?
is the kind of Christophobia that is common currency amongst the Islamic Dawah team.
Okay, listen.
Christophobia is common currency amongst many Muslims. And that is why they have to villainize anyone who criticizes their faith.
No.
Ask for the evidence.
I'll prove it to you.
The pressure
I'll prove it to you.
We hit the
I'll
pressure
prove
point,
it to
don't we?
you. I'll prove it to
Okay,
you.
we're all Christophobic.
The
Where's Morocco?
The
Where's
very
Morocco?
first week that I was here.
Where's Morocco? Where's
The very
Morocco?
first week.
Where's Morocco?
And the second week that I was here. Mansour
Give me facts, so don't.
Mansour and Abdul Hamid both accused me of being a paid missionary. They'd never met me. And here we go, someone else saying that I am.
Well, I don't know.
This is Christophobia.
I don't know.
This is Christophobia.
I don't know if you are. I'm not sure.
I'm talking about this guy who shouted
These
it.
stats. Give me
So,
Morocco.
so the point is,
Morocco.
the point is,
Morocco.
they have to characterize and stereotype Christians, villainize them, because they feel threatened by Christians challenging them on their own faith.
Okay, hold up.
They want to live in a world where no Christian can criticize Islam. So, Coming to Morocco. Coming to Morocco.
Let me talk. Let him talk. Morocco.
Coming to Morocco.
Yes.
The information that I'm basing that on are the testimonies, both, what's the word I'm looking for?
Guys, who's Moroccan over here? Who's Moroccan? Okay.
Yeah.
He'll give you
That means he's an expert on Morocco because he's Moroccan.
No.
That's like saying every Frenchman is an expert on France. That's a joke, man. Fallible logic.
Let him finish.
So,
Go on.
it's based upon the testimonies of the missionaries working inside Morocco.
Here we go.
Now,
Here we go. Someone's uncle and their
what
nephew
was
told
the
him.
dominant? What was the dominant religion?
Stats,
What
give me
is the
stats,
dominant
give me
religion
stats.
in Islam?
You're not talking like Thanos from Avengers don't make you right.
What
Give me
is-
clarity
what-
and emphasis
what
on
is
words
the
on it.
dominant
No,
religion
give me
in
facts.
Islam?
Give me facts. Don't ask
In
me questions.
Morocco.
I'll ask you
In
for facts.
Morocco.
I'll ask you
It's
for facts.
Islam.
Islam.
Why are
Right.
you answering that?
So,
Ask him
don't
for
worry.
facts.
so what room does Islam have to grow in Morocco, vis-a-vis the church?
Is this? Look, I'm asking
Facts.
you. Just show me the evidence.
Don't ask us
that there are
questions. Where's the
Christian
facts?
Moroccans-
Pull up the facts.
Moroccans
Christian
becoming
Moroccans.
Christian.
Okay,
Listen,
that's
up the
easily
facts.
done.
Moroccans
It's a fair
becoming-
question.
Listen, can
It
you
is a
not
fair
twist my
question.
word?
Go on.
Just show me Moroccans becoming Christians.
Fair
That's
enough.
what I'm asking.
That is an absolutely
Okay.
fair question.
Thank you.
And the evidence that I would give to you is simply YouTube the testimonies of the Moroccan. Oh, do you see? Do you see?
According to YouTube,
These three guys appealed to YouTube to show that Islam was growing in the park. But when I appeal to YouTube to show that Christianity is growing in Morocco, they say they don't want YouTube. This is the double standards of the Islamic Dawah team. This is the double standards of the Islamic Dawah team.
We want to give you a message. Just give us the reference.
Don't give me
So
YouTube.
the people who are watching can go and research.
according to
They
YouTube,
can see
according to
the
YouTube,
testimonies.
Just give the reference.
You can do a quick Google.
according to
I will
YouTube,
stick it on the comment section. I'll stick it on the comment
according to
section to this video.
YouTube, Tupac and Biggie are in Cuba. Don't give me YouTube. Give me
He
academic.
said, don't
me
give him
academic.
YouTube.
Give me academic.
But these
Give
three
me-
were all
Give
saying
me academic.
YouTube proved
Give
that
me
Islam was
academic
growing in the park.
Give me academic
Because
stats.
they were quoting a YouTube
Academic-
video to
academic
show
stats.
Islam's growth.
Academic stats.
So notice,
Academic stats.
We're not showing it.
notice
Listen, we're not
how
showing
the Muslims change their criteria of evidence
We are not showing
whenever the
Go on
evidence
YouTube, go to
contradicts
EF
them.
and you can see for yourself.
when evidence
how many
contradicts
English
them,
people became Muslims.
You see?
All over YouTube.
There you go.
Listen,
There you
Asking
go.
for the same
Academic
reference.
stats.
He can't
Stop.
provide
Academic
that.
stats. You're not going to
You
run away.
can find the
Academic stats.
testimonies
You're not running away.
of Muslims who
Academic
become
stats. There we go,
Christians
giving a speech again.
on YouTube.
My brother.
There are plenty of them, and they are not hard to find.
The reference. Give us the reference.
We need hardcore reference.
I just gave you EF
will give some
Dawah.
references.
Everybody, EF Dawah.
I will
Go to
give
EF
some
Dawah and see
references
for yourself.
in the
Do
comment
same.
section. I'll put some references in
Do
the
the
comment
same.
section
Do the
under
same,
the
Bob.
video.
Do the same.
And what references are you using to show
I
Islam
just
is
said
growing in this
EF Dawah
country?
channel, EF Dawah channel,
Yeah.
and you can see for yourself how many people took Shahada.
There you
in the
go.
last
So
couple
you're
of weeks.
using YouTube as evidence,
Right,
but then
but
rejecting
I
YouTube
want
as
you to-
evidence
I want
when
you
it's
to
used to
use
show
YouTube as
that
evidence.
Muslims become Christians.
Yeah, but I want you to use YouTube
For
as
those
evidence
of
to
you
provide
that
the
didn't
same
hear the
thing.
brother,
Provide the same
he
thing.
pointed to his own channel as evidence of Islam's growth,
You all know I'm
which
not
is a
EF Dawah.
YouTube
You all
channel,
know I'm not EF Dawah.
which is a
This
YouTube
Bob.
channel. But then when I said,
can you
go and look
compare
up the
a
testimonies
small
of
target
Muslims
group in a
becoming
park, yeah,
Christians on
to a massive
YouTube,
country.
he said
not gonna take
that
testimony
is not
over YouTube.
acceptable evidence.
You gotta be consistent.
I'm asking him.
This is the double standard of the Islamic Dawah team.
No, you're not. Listen, let me speak to him. I've given you a reference, right? I've given you a name of a channel.
YouTube channel.
All I'm asking, yes.
Yes.
All I'm asking is do the same. Give me the YouTube channel. That's what I'm asking.
I guarantee on Soco Films, those that are watching it will
Give
put.
us the channel.
If you're on Soco Films, please find the testimonies of Muslims becoming Christians on YouTube and put them in the comment section
Morocco, in Morocco.
so that in Morocco and other places, so that EF Dawah can come and actually do some research.
By the way.
I don't know who it is.
And also, Bob, how can you make? I don't think that's a valid comparison. Can I make?
Go on.
I don't think that's a valid comparison.
It's not a valid comparison.
It's not at all, because look, if you look at YouTube, if you're looking to for video testimony on YouTube for a whole country, anyone's anyone. You don't know who's who. These lot are using a more smaller target group in the park where people are more intimate. They know each other. They can know. Okay, this guy was here last week, and we know he wasn't. We know he wasn't Muslim. So you can make that. You can make that judgment. If you're looking at a whole country and saying, look, this guy could be anyone.
Okay, so the comparison, I agree, we're talking about different samples. However, the nature of the evidence is the same. We are talking about YouTube channels. Now you're saying that these people are becoming Muslims.
But nature of the evidence is different compared to...
But we know full well that the AF Dawah channels, the Islamic Dawah channels, present as Christians who have converted to Islam many people who don't know the first thing about Christianity.
Were they still Christians?
But no,
they weren't Christians.
If they don't know their faith and they don't practice their faith, they're not Christians.
So you're saying, wait. So basically, what you're saying is, if you're not allowed to practice your faith properly, you're not a member of that faith. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying if you don't practice it at all. And there are many people being presented on the Islamic Dawah channel.
How do you know? Wait. How do you know whether they practice it or not?
Because you hear them talk and they don't know what they believe.
How about if you believe in it? You believe Jesus is God, He died for you.
I agree.
Are they Christian or not? Are they Christian or not?
I am not stood here.
What is the most?
I am not stood here.
Islam will come up.
Yes, Islam is the fastest growing religion. I don't seek to deny it.
Internet, right, will tell you that Islam
But what is the nature of that growth?
Christianity is a
It is birth rate. It is birth rate. If you look at America, and let's use America as an example,
people are becoming Muslims.
statistically, for every 24 people that convert to Islam, 24 people leave Islam. So the growth in America is not being caused by conversion. The growth in America is being caused by birth rate and immigration.
Really?
Now, let's look at Saudi Arabia, a country, nice speaking to you as well, a country where for hundreds of years, for thousands of years, there was no Christian community. Now, because of immigration, there are now 2 million Christian immigrants in Saudi Arabia. There are so many Christians now in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi government has now made a deal with the Vatican to build the country's first churches since the 7th century. And we know from the testimonies that we are hearing that there is estimated, it is an estimate, of 10,000 former Muslim Saudi citizens who now practice the Christian faith inside Saudi Arabia.
So what?
He says, so what? I'll tell you so what.
Chose to do that.
Yes, it should be like that.
Wait, hold on.
But these Christians
them Muslims
live
as the
in
Christians
fear
that you said before,
of their
where they
lives.
don't know their own religion.
They live in fear of their lives. Because in Saudi Arabia, it is illegal for you to convert to Christianity if you were born a Muslim. That's the law of Saudi Arabia. That is Sharia law. That is the Sharia law. The same Sharia law that these Muslims wish for you to embrace in Europe.
Ask him. So what's this book of Sharia law? Where's this book of Sharia law?
We are not Saudi.
No, where's this book of Sharia law?
If they choose to become Christian, we are not Saudi.
Yeah, but the Saudi government doesn't think like
Go
that.
on, speak about the Saudi government.
It doesn't think like that, does it?
Well, I'm just saying.
What do you mean it doesn't think that?
Well, as a Muslim, what do you believe should happen to someone who leaves the religion of Islam?
You are free.
It's up to them.
You just contradicted yourself.
So Muhammad was wrong when he said, if a person leaves the religion of Islam, he can be killed.
Okay, now watch this.
He wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong.
Respond to him. Let me respond to him right now. He's trying to be very
What
sly.
you're trying to do right now, you're doing a straw man argument, innit? It's because Prophet man, we say anyone is free to do what they want. There's no compulsion in religion. They're free.
That's what the Quran says. Can I
Let's make a really quick point, yeah?
I'll come back to your point, but I'll let him make a point
You're
first.
saying, yeah, that the punishment for apostasy in Islam is death. That's what you're saying, yeah?
That's what Muhammad said.
Okay, cool. But is that what you're arguing? Is that what you're trying to get at? You're saying
What I'm saying is that I am surrounded by Muslims who are denying that there are Muslims becoming Christians.
No. Stick to the point. Stick to the point. Brother, wait, brother.
I use Saudi Arabia.
Wait.
I use Saudi Arabia.
Number one.
Let me
Saudi Arabia is not governed by 100% Sharia law. Yeah. Number two, apostasy. To get killed for apostasy is a very specific circumstance.
Yeah.
That means that it would have to be in a state of war, and the person left the religion as an act of rebellion, and
This
you come
is
and betray the
taqiyya.
people. It's not taqiyya.
You're reinventing Islam.
It's not. It's treason. But
You're
you know why? You know why they say
reinventing Islam.
that? Because in Christianity,
By your logic,
in the Old
for your
Testament,
logic to be
in the Old
true,
Testament, the punishment for
he's made a
apostasy
point. You've
is
made a
death as
point. Now
well.
I'm going to make a
But
point.
there's no
No,
leeway.
you've made a point.
He's made
He's made a point. Now I'm going to make a point. No, you've made a point.
Brother,
He's made
in
a
Christianity,
point.
it's
Now
the same.
I'm going to
That's
make
the
a
reason
point.
why he thinks
Now,
that. Yeah? Because
the reality
is
is
strict.
that for their logic to be true, what they have to admit, therefore, is that Islam has been at war for 1400 years.
That's not true.
Because
That's
the
not true.
application of Sharia law, as evidenced by those who have left Islam, such as in Egypt, in the centuries past, such as in the Middle East, such as in Eastern Europe, such as in Spain under the time of the Islamic occupation, was that those Christians were killed.
Listen to what he just said.
So if your logic
during the
is
Islamic
true,
occupation
if
necessitates
your
war.
logic
Does it
is
not?
true, so by your logic, that means that Islam has been in a state of war for 1400 years, but you come here saying it's a religion of peace.
Sure, man. Again, you put word in my mouth. Yeah. Okay, watch this now. Yeah. Answer this very directly. Yeah. What's the punishment for apostasy in the Old Testament?
The Old Testament does not apply to Christians.
Is it? No. So Jesus didn't say on the Sermon on the Mount, I didn't come to abolish the laws of my forefathers, I come to fulfill them. Keyword abolish. Keyword abolish. Wait. That's just
Allow me to address that point.
Let me just make the second point.
Allow me to address
You
that
made two
point.
claims.
No, let's do it point by point.
No.
Let's do it point by
Just a
point.
second one. No, wait. It's not fair. It's not fair. He made. I let for 2 minutes.
But he was talking. He was.
I made the point. Yeah, I made the point, and so, but I should be given the right to reply to both of his statements. He said the first thing about apostasy. He said the second thing about Islam would have to be in that war for 1400 years. That's not necessarily true. Of course, that's not true. Show me one country today that's governed by 100% Sharia law, then you have a valid point.
So what you're admitting is Islam doesn't work.
What you're
admitting is Islam doesn't work.
So many strawmen.
Muhammad
He will make an
found the
argument.
perfect religion,
He will make an argument.
and
I'll
now
counter
no one
it,
can
and he
find
runs
it
away,
being
and then makes
practiced
another
properly.
argument. Address
So-
what we're talking
so
about.
the point is-
I just countered it. I just said, show me another country. Show me a country today in the world where it's governed by 100% Sharia law. Only then. There's no country that applies Sharia law. He's covering all these countries like Egypt. They're Muslim countries. There's Muslims there, just the same way Israel's a Jewish country, but it's not governed by Jewish law.
I'm trying to
An
listen,
Islamic
but he's just talking.
Sorry?
He is just
Islamic.
talking.
Iran.
Go on, say your point again.
I'm saying.
Say that again, sorry.
Yeah, the Old Testament. When Jesus came, I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it.
It's not the Old Testament, that's the New Testament.
Yeah, New Testament. So hold on. So that means you believe in it then? Why do you reject it then?
Right, can I address that point?
But do you reject this verse?
Can I address that point?
Do you believe in this verse?
Can I address the point? Yeah, I'll address the point. So, no.
He can try to.
Allow me to address the point.
Try to cherry coat it no matter how he wants it, but the words are clear.
Right, okay.
In the scripture, the words
According,
are clear.
if you
didn't come to abolish
allow
it.
me to address the point.
Can
I address the point?
Let him address the point.
Okay. So, if you read the Old Testament, it talks about a new covenant. It talks about a new covenant coming. Now, I'm going to try and find the verse, hopefully, before this conversation is over. If you can find it for us. It talks about a new covenant. Now, I'll just make my point. I won't ask any questions. A covenant is the agreement between the Almighty and the one to whom He is making the covenant. And the covenant that He made with Moses and the people of Israel, the Hebrews, after they came out of Egypt was another covenant from the time of the covenant that he made with Abraham, which means that each time in history new covenants are made, and the new covenant of the Christian church is based. Which passage?
You know what he's doing? He's trying.
Which passage? I'll read it here. 21. Jeremiah. 1 second.
31 verse 31. You know,
Jeremiah.
I know my question was right.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer. Thank you. Are you listening?
Do you reject it or not?
I'm going to address this point.
Are you for it or are you for it? That's my question.
I'm sorry. So it's not about being for it or against it. It's about understanding it properly and not quoting it out of context like you do. That's what you're doing. You're quoting it out of context.
But you see how it started? He's trying to say apostasy in Islam. Now he finds himself having to defend himself.
Are you listening? Are you listening?
Are you
listening? Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day I took them I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. So it's referring to the covenant with Moses. My covenant, which they broke, although I was husband to them, declares the Lord. But this is the covenant which I will make with them, with the house of Israel, after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. They will not teach again each man his neighbor and each man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, their sin I will remember no more. Let me finish. Now, Christ is the inauguration of this new covenant. In Luke, yep, you beat me to me. You beat me to
22 verse 20. 22 verse 20.
Let me finish.
Let him finish.
Let me finish my point.
Brother, 1 second. Yeah, let him finish his point, and he's gonna trap himself.
So, at the 22
verse 20. What points are we discussing?
Verse 20.
It's the Last Supper.
Yeah. Okay. So, the Last Supper. Which gospel? Luke. Chapter. Chapter. Before that.
No, brother. Don't worry. We don't do what they do.
There we go.
Yeah?
So,
they jump around.
Verse 20.
No, we stick to the point.
Verse 20. Yeah, you do need to stick to a point. So please do.
To the point.
Listen to the words of Jesus. And in the same way he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, this cup which is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood.
Okay.
He's referring to the prophecy of Jeremiah.
Okay.
And in Matthew 28.
Brother, wait.
In Matthew 28.
1 second, yeah. 1 second. Let him finish.
In Matthew 28.
He can take as long as he wants.
In Matthew 28.
Change his mind. Yeah, brother. It's as simple as this, yeah.
In Matthew 28, listen, because in Jeremiah we all heard it clearly. The house of Israel, the house of Israel, the house of Israel. But Jesus, who inaugurates the new covenant in his blood, the blood of the new covenant, in Matthew 28, expands the new covenant to every nation. All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. What prophet can say that? All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. So the new covenant is open to all people.
Let me respond there. You said, this is what I quote you. You said, listen to the words of Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah? This is what you said.
Yep.
Okay. Matthew 5:17.
Yep.
Yeah? So I'm not pointing to no. I'm not going to no ambiguous verses where it could have been this and I have to jump from verse to verse. We're sticking in the New Testament, yeah? Think not that I have come to abolish the laws of the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Keyword abolish. Yeah? Abolish. What does abolish mean? Change. Yeah?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. It means to stop.
Throw away.
It means
to throw away.
Introduce something new. That's what abolish means.
What?
Okay, now watch this, yeah? It's either that, either you don't understand your own Bible, which I highly doubt, Bob, because you are a learned man, yeah? Or God changed his mind. It's as simple as that. God changed his mind.
Can I reply?
God of the Old Testament, the God of the New
Allow
Testament.
me to
That's what I'm
reply.
saying. I pointed to a very
Allow
clear
me to
verse.
reply.
Not to know new
Allow me to
covenant, no this and that.
reply.
It's
Allow
very,
me to
very clear
reply.
verse.
Allow me to reply.
1 second.
Okay, finish your point. Finish your point.
Is this Jesus speaking? Is this Jesus speaking?
This is Jesus speaking.
This is Jesus speaking.
Yes, this is Jesus.
Okay, so is God contradictory?
So, allow me to reply. Okay. So, allow me to reply. No, God did not change his mind. I noticed clearly that the Muslim cut off the verse at the point that served him and ignored the bit of the verse that doesn't serve him. Jesus said, I have not come to abolish the law, not a jot, not a tittle, until all is fulfilled. What is fulfilled? What is he referring to? He's referring to the Old Testament prophets that spoke of his coming. Because with his coming comes a new covenant. With his coming, a new covenant is inaugurated. As he inaugurated a new covenant very clearly in Luke 21. So it's not about the God of the New Testament being different to the God of the Old Testament. It is that the God of the Old Testament is fulfilling his prophecies in the coming of Christ. That's what you're reading. All of it, not the bits you want to use.
So you're saying the problem with Jesus, essentially what you're saying is that Jesus came
and where it's been fulfilled, it's been fulfilled.
Okay, Bob.
These are fulfilled.
Are you for it though?
Brother.
Do I believe it? What do you mean by am I for
Are
it?
you a Gentile?
Are you for this? You know that it says.
I'll answer the question. I'll answer the question as clear as I can.
Don't give me the opportunity to speak.
Don't give me the opportunity to speak.
Don't give me
You don't want me to speak.
It's all right, brother. So, what I'm trying to say is that do you believe in this verse?
Let me be clear. I'm going to address this point. I am going to address the point.
So you believe in this?
Can I address the point?
So wait, brother.
Can I address the point?
Because he made a point. He made a very valid
Can
point.
I address the point? No, he's made a point.
remember-
You were too busy talking to everyone else. No, you spoke now. I'm going to speak. He spoke.
It's as simple as this.
Right. Bottom line, I am for the new covenant as the new covenant is understood. And the new covenant is understood as the fulfillment of the old. So where the old is fulfilled, it no longer applies.
So the verse that you read,
brother.
Yes. The verse he read
the one you
of the
read,
new covenant.
continually,
Shall we read it again?
The one,
Yeah, I know, but look, it's not about that. Just ask him this. So is he saying that all the prophecies in the Old Testament has already come to pass? Is this what he's saying? Ask him if that's what he's saying.
Never said that strong.
I never said that.
He did.
I never said that.
What did he say?
I'll answer the question directly. You don't need to go to a third man. I'm right here.
But when I want to talk to you, you
I'll
don't
answer
listen
the
to me. So that's what I'm
question.
talking about.
You've asked a question, but allow me to answer. This is the problem with the Islamic Dawah team.
I asked you the
They
question.
don't understand a question. They don't understand the difference between a question and a statement.
Honestly, how many times did I ask him the question?
So,
How many times did I ask
let
him
me
the
answer
question?
your question.
Someone just someone else. He wants to
Can I
answer.
answer your question? Can I answer your question? Okay, so your question. Repeat your question, please.
So are you saying? Because look, let's just follow this logically, yeah.
The question.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you the question, yeah. But very logically, I said to you, it says that not a single law is going to be changed. Yeah? He hasn't come to abolish the law of his forefathers. He's come to fulfill them. You said I've conveniently cut the verse halfway through and said until all is fulfilled.
Yes.
So what is meant by all is fulfilled?
Right.
Are you saying that means that every prophecy in the Old Testament has been fulfilled?
Okay.
Yeah.
Keyword.
Allow me to address the question.
All is all.
Allow me to address the question. The prophecies of the Old Testament with regards to the Messiah, some have been fulfilled. Am I allowed to answer the question? Some of them have been fulfilled in Christ's first coming, and some of them will be fulfilled in his second coming.
Key point.
Yes.
So he hasn't come a second time yet.
No,
So that means that war is not abolished yet.
No, hold
that
on
means
one
the law
second.
still stands because you said that I haven't come to abolish the laws of my forefathers until all is fulfilled. And he just said
Hold on one
that
second.
Some of them have been fulfilled in the
Hold
first
on one
coming, some of them
second.
have been fulfilled in the second coming.
What you're
So the second coming hasn't
misunderstanding.
come yet, so that means
What
the law
you're
shouldn't be abolished.
misunderstanding. What you're misunderstanding.
man. We want to learn, man.
What
You
you're
are in the wrong place, Kolan.
What? No,
You
bro.
wanna learn, you don't come to the back.
What you're
It's
misunderstanding.
the worst
Have I
class
misunderstood it?
in this
What you
world.
yes, you have misunderstood.
It's the worst
You have
class.
misunderstood it.
Elaborate.
I'm
trying
we're
to.
having it's a debate. debate.
I'm
really.
trying to.
Let him elaborate.
Yeah, but it's pointless. If you're debating for nothing, it's
You
pointless.
cannot learn anything from this
So,
man.
You're gonna make a point.
Can I answer the question?
Between you two.
Can I answer the question? So, in terms of the covenant, what needs to be fulfilled are those things that are prerequisites to Christ coming. So we look at the prophecies, for example, in Isaiah. I'll give you an example. Thank you very much. This is an example of the kind of thing that Christ fulfilled and thus inaugurates the new covenant. Now, as you listen to this, I want you to remember what happened to Christ, as you know from history, as you know from the account of the Gospels, and listen to the prophecy that was written 600 years before his birth. It's a long passage, I apologize. Who has believed our message? To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him a tender shoot, and like a root out of parched ground, he has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was born in a humble status of humble stock. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and like one from whom men hide their face. Christ was rejected by his own people.
That can fit in the prophet.
And like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we, i.e. the Jewish people, did not esteem him. Surely our griefs he himself bore. Christ bore the iniquities of the world, and our sorrows he carried, as we Christians believe. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, just as the Muslims will quite rightly point out that any man hung on a tree is accursed. We believe Christ was accursed for our sin. And this is what was prophesied.
God was a curse.
He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely for our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he,
I want to say one more thing.
but he was pierced.
That can fit many people.
He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Is this not what we believe about Christ? All of these things. So in answer to your question about the fulfillment, Christ fits the prophecies of the Messiah.
Okay, that's not what I
When
asked
the
you.
Messiah comes, the covenant of Moses is completed.
Okay.
The point of the covenant of Moses, if you read Deuteronomy 18:18,
But that's in the future, right?
no, it's happened in the past.
No, the second
Jesus
coming,
fulfilled it. No.
So the second coming, that was already
Jesus.
happened.
What was the covenant that he fulfilled?
I'm asking you, Bob, yeah?
Let's go back.
Wait, no. Bob, I'm
Why
asking
is the thing he will fulfill? No. When he comes back,
His point. Let him speak. Let him speak. He's not heckling. Let him
I
speak.
just want to make a very simple point, yeah?
Yeah, go on.
He said that the law will be fulfilled, yeah? Once all the prophecies have come to pass, yeah? That's what you're saying, yeah?
Did
And
Jesus-
let me just make a quick point, yeah? So what you're saying is, I asked you, have they all come to pass in the Old Testament? You said no, because the second coming doesn't come yet. This is still in the future. Therefore, that law cannot apply. That means he still hasn't come to abolish the law.
Why
Hasn't come to change the law. Furthermore, go to Acts 3:12.
Are you listening?
Go to Acts 3:12.
Let me address this point. Let me address
You
this.
said you was going to address it.
Let me address this point because you didn't listen.
I listened to you
When I
carefully.
gave the
You
answer
gave me a
the
different
first
answer.
time, he was too busy talking to other people to listen to what I was trying to say to
I was
him.
listening the whole time.
So I will listen. I will speak to you again. Are you listening? Yes, you
listening the whole
can.
time. I was
Yes, you
listening the whole time. You
can.
can't
Yes, listen carefully. Behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. The Mosaic covenant is fulfilled because the Mosaic covenant is about
we go
God
back to-
redeeming
go back
his
to Matthew
people
5:17,
through
please.
temple sacrifice.
Let's go back to Matthew 5:17 because you're not. I don't know.
I don't understand
I don't know
this,
if he's purposely not answering my question.
I'm talking about all.
No,
That's what you're talking about.
The verse specifically
What
uses the word all.
yeah? See Moses,
When
yeah?
the Old Testament
Moses
said,
covenant, yeah?
when the
Jesus
second
didn't
coming
destroy
of
it.
Jesus.
Yes or no?
I know, brother.
That's the whole thing.
I'm on your side. I'm on your side.
That's what I thought.
What was your point?
See the Moses law, the law of Moses, yeah? You see the law of Moses, yeah?
Yeah.
Jesus didn't destroy the law of Moses, did he? Yeah? Right,
No,
did he destroy it? He fulfilled it.
it.
All right, cool.
Yeah, of course.
So,
The end of the temple,
So-
the end of
so-
the sacrificial system.
all right, okay. So hold
let
on
me
a
just read
minute.
this.
Hold a minute. So you agree on apostasy, the Old Testament? It says that the hands of cutting, the apostasy. You know what I mean?
No, I'm saying that no longer applies.
Kill.
The whole of the
but you do know that, right?
The whole of the Mosaic law is attached to temple sacrifice.
Yeah.
The high point, the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
But this is the point. You see, if you make points like that, you're going to give him an opportunity to sliver out.
You can't just be the one that talks. Let him talk as well. And now let me
Yeah, but you
address his
didn't
point.
address my point, Bob.
I did.
You didn't.
So
You didn't.
hold on one
clearly
second.
didn't, Bob.
So the point that you let me no. Let me speak. The point that I'm making to you. You're saying Mosaic law is somehow we should still chop off hands. Everything about the Mosaic law is interwoven. And the pinnacle point, the linchpin of all Mosaic law is the temple and temple worship and temple sacrifice. So
you didn't destroy that.
when this is completed, then it no longer applies and all the stitching comes undone. It goes back to the Abrahamic covenant. And what was the Abrahamic covenant?
You tell me.
The Abrahamic covenant was that I will multiply thy seed, and that all the promises will be fulfilled in him, and it speaks of seed singular. One person.
But he carried on. He didn't say, okay, Jesus he didn't say, okay, this law, I'm going to change it to my own. You know what I mean? He fulfilled it. He's like, you know what I'm saying?
Just stick to the text because unless we don't stick to the text, he's just going to keep slithering away.
But what it is, we're trying to learn it.
I know exactly what you're saying, brother. But what I'm saying is, if we don't stick to the text, he's going to slither away. We have to stick to the words and the text.
He didn't destroy it.
He clearly didn't.
He didn't destroy it. If he destroyed it, Bob, if he destroyed it, he said, I disagree with it.
Brother, can I make a point?
No,
can I make a point?
the abolish.
You want to come in?
Come in.
Yeah, but he said, I didn't abolish, but I came to fulfill it. He didn't abolish it.
That means you will follow
So
it.
he didn't destroy it.
No, let him speak.
No.
You had your chance, let him speak.
I lose my chain of thought.
Let him speak, go on.
No, I didn't finish what I was going to say.
Sorry, could I ask
So the point I was making is,
Thank you, go on.
the point I was making is that law still applies today. Reason being because not all the prophecies have come to pass. And out of your own mouth, you said that the law would change once all the prophecies have been fulfilled. If we go back to that
Prophecies of who?
if you go back to the verse of the Old Testament, whether it's regards to Jesus or not, prophecies. Okay, even if it is regards to Jesus, you just agreed that not all the prophecies will be fulfilled until he comes the second time.
Yeah.
Yes, this is what you said. So if we come back to the verse, it says, "Think not that I have come to abolish the laws of the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not a iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished."
So he agreed with it.
Key word, all.
He agreed with it. So he agreed with it.
Brother, we're making the same point. Yeah.
So, yeah,
The problem is, what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to stick to the text. Yeah. Because when you don't stick to the text, you're given an opportunity to worm out of his way. Out of it. So what I'm saying is, until his second coming comes, not all prophecies have been fulfilled. Therefore, that law still applies. Therefore, he should still follow the apostasy. He's still agreeing with it.
He's still agreed with it.
Exactly.
Because if he didn't agree with it,
brother, let me tell you something. He's not going to agree with it. He's not going to agree with it because obviously he preaches against this.
Can I address that point?
against this or not?
Can I address that
Of course, he
point?
preaches against it. You hear him? We can.
Do you want to talk to him or do you want to talk to me? Okay. So, in answer to this point, in terms of all, in this country, we just had, I'm going to use an analogy. In terms of this country, we've just had a referendum. And the binding is based upon a simplistic majority, is it not? Yeah? So,
What do you mean by referendum?
the nation is said to have made a decision based upon a referendum in which there was a split vote, some in agreement, some in disagreement.
But you
Now-
realise referendums aren't binding.
No, I'm just simply trying to use an illustration.
I don't think it's valid.
That in terms, when Christ is speaking of all, he is speaking of all prophecies of himself at the first coming.
Yeah, but how do we know this, Bob? You just moved. You considerably moved away from the initial point that you made. You said until all of his prophecy is coming, and that includes the second coming prophecy.
This is how the church has always understood it, my friend.
It's convenient for you, though. Yeah. That's very convenient, because just a second ago you were saying something else.
I can't take that from a Muslim
ago he was saying something
who
else.
invents their religion from generation to generation.
Says someone who relies purely on his church fathers. And he talks about inventing religion from generation to generation when he agrees that his own text has not been preserved.
So I'm going to quote the apostles. Brethren, I speak in terms of human relations, even though it is only a man's covenant, yet when it has been ratified, no one sets it aside or adds conditions to it. Now the promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. He does not say, and to seeds, as referring to many, but rather to one. And to your seed, the Apostle Paul.
We're going to ask him something really quickly.
And to your seed, that is Christ. What I am saying is this: the law, which came 430 years later, does not invalidate a covenant previously ratified by God, so as to nullify the promise. For if the inheritance is based on law, it is no longer based on a promise. But God has granted it to Abraham by means of a promise. So what is being fulfilled is the promises to Abraham. That is what annuls the covenant with Moses.
So it's nothing to do with the prophecies. Then. Is that what you're saying? It's nothing to do with
Christ said that the law of Moses would not be done away with until all was fulfilled.
Brother, even if that's the case, the key word here is all is fulfilled.
And the promise was to Abraham.
But is that? Show me one clear verse where that's what.
I've just showed it you.
You never.
Why the law then?
That's ambiguous. How do I know?
The law then?
How do I know?
Why the law then?
Okay.
It was added because of transgressions, having been ordained through angels by the agency of a mediator, until the seed would come to whom the promise had been made. Now a mediator is not for one party solely, whereas God is only one. Is the law then contrary to the promise of God? May it never be. For if a law had been given which was able to impart life, then righteousness would indeed have been based on law. But the scripture has shut up everyone under sin, so that the promise by faith in Jesus Christ might be given to those who believe.
Okay, look, Bob, because we could go around in circles all day. I just want to ask one simple question.
Yes. Okay.
It's as simple as this, yeah?
You're not going to, but go on.
I will, I promise you. Yeah? Show me one clear verse, which I can clearly see that Paul or somebody in the Bible is referring to that Old Testament verse where Jesus, it says on the Sermon on the Mount that I have come to abolish the laws of my forefather, and I have only come to, I haven't come to abolish them, I've come to fulfill them. Nothing will be changed until all comes to pass. Yeah?
Okay.
And then show me where, because you just read that verse, and I feel like everyone here feels like it's quite ambiguous. Yeah. So what I'm going to say is, show me one clear verse where it shows, okay, cool, that is the case. The argument you just made is the case, and it is in direct reference to the point I made. Exactly. If not, it's just a matter of interpretation. Exactly. That's the point I'm making.
No, I'm sorry.
From the beginning.
I'm sorry.
And to be honest, Paul, Bob, yeah,
Can I reply?
I feel like you've substantially moved away from the initial point that you made. First you said that it had to be after the second coming. And now when you said, okay, so that means that law still applies today.
In the conversation that we have had, may I reply now? In the conversation that we have had, we have started off on a point, on a premise. A false premise pushed by the Islamic Dawah team every single week. Can I speak without interruption?
I'm not part of
Can I speak without interruption? Do you notice? Notice I listened to you.
No, but you're lying.
Now pay me the courtesy.
Sorry, Bob.
Quiet. You weren't interrupting when he was talking. Don't interrupt. Thank you. So, when we started this conversation, you started on a false premise. The false premise was that we Christians are bound to the Old Covenant. When we Christians believe that the Old Covenant and all the Mosaic prophets point to the coming of the Messiah. Ask any Jew, they will agree with me. when the Messiah comes, a new covenant is inaugurated. That is what happens. And the reason why the Messiah inaugurates a new covenant and does away with the Mosaic covenant is because the Messiah is the fulfillment of the covenant made with Abraham, which proceeds, takes precedence over, is above the Mosaic law.
I understand.
So, when Christ said, not a jot or tittle of the Mosaic law will be done away with until all is fulfilled, he is talking about the coming of the Messiah and everything that that means. He has come. Tell me, as a Muslim, let's just settle this argument right now. As a Muslim, do you believe Christ is the Messiah?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
Can I expand on that?
Thank you.
Can I expand?
Thank you.
Bob, I gave you what you wanted. Let me at least give me the decency to respond.
I thought you were going to walk away.
I
told you.
I will walk away.
It's a prophecy.
I will. No. It's not a prophecy.
Go on.
It's because what you did. But what you done was very. I would like to. What you done was very slight because obviously you made a straw man argument again out of me. What you said was in reference to me. You said that I started out with a false premise. I would argue it's not a false premise because, like you just agreed, that the law, this new covenant will not come into effect until all of the prophecies have been fulfilled. Yes, and you just agreed that there's still prophecies to come. So the second coming is a prophecy in itself. So the point I'm making is,
Can I reply to that point?
I haven't finished.
Well, talk to me then, not to him.
So
I've got like 15 minutes. Go on, make your point.
The prophecies, that there are still prophecies that are to come, such as Jesus' second coming. That's number one. Number two, there's no direct mention of the Mosaic law. He just says the laws of my forefathers. He just says the laws of my forefathers. Because that could
And
be
who was he referring to?
That could be all his predecessors.
Who brought the law?
His predecessors.
Who brought the law?
So Moses was the only person who came with the law.
Exactly. So my point is. So my point.
Can you just acknowledge that? Can you just acknowledge what I just said? Can you acknowledge that the reason why I made that argument is because Jesus has not
can I reply?
come yet.
Can I reply?
And I'm looking at the text where it says all prophecies have to be fulfilled.
Can I reply? Can I reply? Thank you. Thank you. The problem with the Islamic Dawah team is that allow me. Notice they interrupt again. Always, when I try to reply, they interrupt. But when one of their Muslim brothers is speaking, they're all quiet and listening. So let's be clear. Let's be clear. If I did not communicate at the very beginning what I meant, in the course of the last hour, you have had sufficient time to absorb any corrections necessary.
And I feel like you did it.
In a conversation that goes backwards and forwards, where each person only speaks for a few minutes, it is hard to package the whole narrative in one go. It takes time to spread it all out, to press it all out. You've had over an hour now, and I've made it really clear. Christ was speaking about himself as the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies of the Messiah. He understood himself that way very clearly throughout the New Testament. That is very clear about how the apostles also understood Jesus. Your argument can only stand if you reject Christ as the Messiah, as the Jews do.
Straw man again.
But you believe that Jesus is the Messiah. If he is the Messiah, then he fulfills all the things that the Messiah does. And in the Old Testament, when the Messiah comes, the Mosaic law is completed.
Come back.
Why? Because the Mosaic law is built upon the promises given to Abraham, and Christ is the fulfillment of those prophecies.
Okay, can I just make one quick point? Yeah, it's very important. You always refer to me and other people as Islamic Dawah team. I would like to point out I am merely a layman. I have no formal education in theology like you do. Yeah?
I never. I don't.
Okay, then. No problem. I'm not Islamic. So you don't have a formal education. What degree did you do?
Religious studies.
What is theology?
Theology is a different subject entirely.
Mistake. Is it so? Theology is not the study of religion.
Theology is not the subject of the study of religion.
See, that just goes to show I'm a layman. That just goes to show I'm a layman. Okay. Yeah, no, he knows this, but he has to do it for his subscribers.
Well, I would say that the camera evidence will show you here for the last 4 weeks, and for the last 4 weeks, at least 3 of those weeks, all you did is heckle me.
Okay, but
But we're talking now. We're talking now.
And I respect you. I respect you for talking to me because usually I feel like you don't like speaking to me. I don't know why. Maybe
Because you heckled me in the past. Now we're talking.
I only start heckling you when you didn't want to speak to me.
Carry on.
See, look,
Carry on.
cameraman is. So this is your
You're not
cameraman.
neutral, innit?
Okay, cool. But it's
you like
carry on?
Okay, let me finish my point. Okay,
It's a
if you
Christian
just keep
channel.
quiet,
No, I thought
allow me to finish my point. Yeah. Okay.
It's not a neutral channel. It's not a neutral channel, man.
Again,
I thought you was like COE, like neutral.
I don't know
not
if
neutral.
it's
a Christian channel,
I have a lack of understanding or
no, it's good to be neutral, innit?
What you're saying, but I still feel like you have failed.
Preach that to the Dawa team.
I still feel like you have failed to show that all of prophecy, all of the Old Testament prophecies regarding Jesus have come to pass. Because this is what what the verse clearly says.
No, it says all has been fulfilled.
Until all has been fulfilled. What does that mean?
What is he referring to? He's referring to the coming of the Messiah. He is the Messiah, therefore it's fulfilled.
When you go back to the video, when you go back to watch the video, you see
I agree
all the
with you.
prophecies regarding Jesus have been fulfilled. That's what you said. And you can't go back on your word.
No, I didn't. Because if you actually listen carefully, I said that there were prophecies.
Everyone seems be honest. Did he say that?
What I said was, I said that they were fulfilled. They were in two. Those that were fulfilled at the first coming and those that were fulfilled.
What you said was very, very
that will be fulfilled at the second.
I may not be smart, but I understand.
Let the audience decide. Let's not quibble. Let the audience decide. So my point to you, and to all of the Muslims who might be hearing my voice, and to anyone else,
the conversation again.
and anyone else who wants to take this subject seriously. If you want to study the Bible, don't study it through the prism of an Islamic pamphlet or through a sermon by Zakir Naik or Shabia
I
Ali.
went to a Church of England school.
If you want to study the Christian faith, study the Bible as it was understood by the Christian church. Why? Because the New Testament was written by Christians, for Christians, to Christians, which means that the church is the one that has the authority to interpret its own texts. The New Testament that you are quoting is a Christian text. We are the ones who are best to interpret it for you.
Can I just ask you one quick question then? So you're saying that the New Testament was written by Christians, early Christians, for Christians, to Christians. Is that what you said? Yeah. So basically, in essence, what you're saying is that it's just basically an Aramaic version of the Hadith that doesn't really stand to the same sort of level of scrutiny as the Hadith.
No, I'm not.
So how can you stand there? And
I'm not saying that. I have a
Hadith
different criteria. I don't believe in the Chinese whispers known as Hadith chains. I don't believe that just because you can remember a series of names and that series of names seems to be agreed upon, that suddenly means everything else you say is reliable. I don't believe in that rubbish. So there is a better criterion of evidence. And here's what I would invite you to do. I would invite you to do this. I would invite you to do this. The Gospels make a very clear claim. They make a claim that Christ was crucified and rose from the dead. Now go and check out what the historians of the first century, Josephus,
who you read,
Tacitus,
a different version of
Sorius, Suetonius,
I'm
go and read what they said, and then compare it to what the Quran says, and see which one's talking about real history and which one's making stuff up.
I never
have to go.
I never referred to the Quran. I referred to the Hadith.
I have to go. I have to go. I have to go. Don't make me be rude. I have to go. I have to go. I'm sorry. Next week. I have to go. I have to go. I'm sorry.
Josephus.
I have to go. I have to go.
Maybe one day we can do this off camera.
Off camera will be better.
Yeah, I'm walking.
One day we can do this off camera, and maybe
we'll talk some more.